Our special guest today is arguably the most renowned media trainer in all of Europe. He's fluent in multi languages. He's the founder of the German Institute for Communications. And unlike here in the United States, where pretty much anyone can call themselves a media trainer, he has tremendous credentials. He's got a PhD in environmental politics, an actual doctorate in environmental politics. He has an MBA. He is versatile in all aspects of finance, politics. He's worked with prime ministers, presidents of major companies and corporations and countries around the world. It is my great honor to bring with us today to the program Dr. Nikolai Behr. Nikolai, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Fine. Thank you, TJ. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. And I want to just dive right in and get your sense of cross-cultural politics, media, communication, because unlike me, I'm one of these ugly Americans who only speaks English. So I do have that disadvantage of having a bias where I look at things through a particular lens. You're there in the heart of Europe. You speak multiple languages. You're constantly having to juggle between different cultures because you have so many cultures there. What is it like, and how do you adjust your own trainings, whether you're preparing someone to give a speech or a media interview or to host their own podcast, factoring in all of these different cultural language nuances?
So thank you very much, TJ, for having me. And I'm glad to be able to talk to you about my work a little bit. So indeed, we have a lot of international clients, and especially since the COVID pandemic. So we did always online training for, I'd say, 8 years maybe now. And we offer 7 languages with our training. So I don't speak 7 languages.
7 languages. I don't even know if I could name 7 languages.
Well, in Europe, we have a lot of languages. So you get to use some Italian, some Spanish, some French if you go in different restaurants or you go there on holidays. And you have to adapt a little bit. And indeed, the culture is different in every of these countries. And journalism is different, politics is different, and the style of leading companies is a little bit different. But what they all have in common, that the main working language, meanwhile, is English. So I worked in the industry for a big German or big Munich car manufacturer with sporty cars for 7 years. So in there, the working language was English. And even before, I was a lot of times in the United States. So that's where we met. And we found out we're doing practically the same job. And after I left the industry and founded my own company here in Munich, Germany, I went out and looked for clients where I can bring in my expertise as a former TV journalist, as a marketing manager. And one of the first rules I learned, and I learned it already as a young journalist when I did TV interviews, is to listen. And that's the same in all of the cultures. You have to listen.
It's much more fun to talk, though, and to have everyone listen to us, right?
Yeah. So sometimes it's hard to do. Yeah. First, listen to them. Yeah. And they will tell their problems. And sometimes if you are empathetic enough, you kind of feel what's the real problem there. And, well, there's a wide range what we can do. We do body language training. We do voice training. We do a lot of interview preparation. We do preparations for general annual meetings. We do preparations for union meetings, for crisis situations, for press interviews. So
back
for
to your
each and every situation, you have to adopt.
Yeah. Back to, let's say you're working with a major CEO of a significant car company. How do you actually teach someone to be empathetic or to have better listening skills? Because many CEOs get in this bubble where everyone's hanging on their every word, saying, yes, boss, right away. and it can be isolating, and it can sometimes encourage bad habits because the person's used to just barking orders.
Yeah, there are still these CEOs who just barking orders, and for them it's hard to adopt these new leadership styles. But if you can give them examples and you work with them and you do the training and you have the training together with some of their employees and you show them on a practical mode how it is if they listen clearly. And we have some exercises where you have to really listen to someone precisely to get the whole picture. And that's all about communication. It's the picture I have in my mind to bring the message across that you got the same picture in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we have so many doors where we open them and we just get a word or a sentence and think, oh yeah, this is this situation. And we mostly don't imagine, well, maybe there's a completely different meaning of this word or this sentence. And that's what we have to work out when doing the messaging, apart from all the body language stuff. Yeah, when we just go to the message, how to bring the message from the CEO to his customers, to his suppliers, to his team.
Now you work with people in Germany, obviously, but Americans, Brits, French, Italians, all over. What to you is the biggest difference in how, beyond the fact that the language can be different, what is the biggest difference in how leaders use language differently and listen differently? Walk us through some of those cultural differences that when you take on a new assignment, you have to be aware of. Because I remember once making a huge blunder. I was training a bunch of Italian semiconductor executives, and we were in Paris, I believe. And they said, what do you want for lunch? I said, well, let's just bring sandwiches in. We got to get through this, get more time on camera because time is so precious. And they informed me, TJ, that is not how we do things here. And they practically implied I was a naked savage for suggesting that. Like, we're going to have a proper meal. There's going to be a tablecloth. The wine will be served. And we're going to have a proper lunch. And I said, okay. And it was a great lunch.
And we will spend a long time there.
I was guilty of bringing my own American approach to things. So I made a mistake. Tell us, how do you prepare for different cultural nuances when you're in a training or about to do a training with people?
So you could have done so in Germany. That's the difference between Germany and France. So in Germany, we're much more looking for productivity and have a short just a short lunch. And there it could work with the sandwich, even though most people eat a proper lunch here. But before going to a different culture on the language base, just see two different countries next to each other, like Austria and Germany. There's a huge difference in how journalists or how CEOs talk to other people. So in Germany, you're very directly. Yeah, we say what we want. We are not very much polite. In Austria, if you do it like this, you won't be successful. I once trained the Austrian head of business of an international pharmaceutical company, and the training was in Germany because all the heads of the different countries were assembled in Munich for this media training. And we did the interview training like a journalist and asking tough questions on the pharmaceutical research, on why it's so expensive and all this stuff. And out of a sudden he stopped and said, no, that's not the way we do it in Austria. I said, oh God, what happened? No, I've never experienced a journalist so unpolite like you. I said, okay, but what happens if a German journalist goes to Austria? They're like, no, I don't do this. I don't do this. And it took maybe 20 minutes for the press officer to persuade him to finish the training. he was so upset. And it was a real new experience for me. I knew that the Austrians are, compared to the Germans, are much more polite, but they really refused to work with you if you don't have a certain standard of politeness. And I don't consider myself as an unpolite person, but
I can attest to that. You're
as
a paragon of
you're
politeness.
tough, and you, the tradition in German politics is not to look too much to the rank, even if it's a minister or a head of state or company boss. You try to talk to them on eye level, and you're tough, and that's completely different in Austria, for example.
So that does raise the question, though, of what do you do if you're training someone? The custom of dealing with the media is one way for their country, but they're telling you, hey, I may have to go on the BBC or CNN or Al Jazeera. So you know they, at some level, especially if it's a crisis, they could receive journalistic inquiries from all over the world. I've faced that dilemma before, especially if I'm dealing with, let's say, a political figure in the Middle East. They're used to extraordinarily deferential media. Yeah. They're not going to get that if all of a sudden the London Times or CNN is calling. How do you balance what they're used to with what they might face? Because if you plan for everything they could face, it may jeopardize your relationship if they think you're too rude.
Yeah. So when going to an unknown territory for them, we have two traders or two ladies who do intercultural training and look specifically into the country's specifics. For the normal business language, for the normal international appearance, especially in business programs, in economic reports, there is a certain standard which is not reflected too much on the individual standards of politeness or procedures in these countries. So first of all, be smart, always. Be polite, be decent, but be clear, strong, and concise with your message. Don't confront people, especially not in face of their employees in other countries. So there are certain techniques you should consider when going abroad, but in general, the most important is to have a clear message, to know what you want, and to listen to your stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. So let's step back for a moment. First of all, thank everyone for joining the program today. I'm TJ Walker. Our special guest today is Dr. Nikolai Behr. He is one of the foremost media trainers in the world and most prominent I know of in Europe. He's based in Germany, but trains people all over the world on how to communicate more effectively. And he's open to your questions now. You can post your questions in the chat. I see ZMI has stopped by to say hello. You can post your questions in the chat. You can actually join us live and ask him a question directly by hitting the StreamYard button. If you want to find out more about Dr. Behr, we've posted his links to TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. He is prolific on social media, constantly giving a steady stream of insights and fascinating tips on how to be a better communicator. Nikolai, let's step back a minute. You're younger than I am, but you're old enough to have seen a lot of change in the media landscape in your country and your part of the world and worldwide. Who, growing up, were your role models as communicators and as media personalities? And is that what drove you into an early career as a journalist?
Well, one role model really was Larry King. I watched him a lot. And that's probably the reason I'm wearing a lot of times this vest here. That's always my Larry King style.
The vest, and
when I do my
for
podcast,
many years,
I usually wear this.
And for many years, he he wore suspenders.
Yeah. I'm not that old.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I used to host a show on Larry King's first radio show in Miami Beach. It was 1,000 watts. If you drove more than 10 blocks away, no one could hear it. But 30 years ago, I was in the same chair he had been in 60 years ago. So his broadcast career ended up going a little further than mine did. Who else were your role models?
Well, you know, in German TV, we couldn't see that much from the US, for example. So we had local German ones, a lot of very good ones, but they were never very famous in the US. So what I really liked was when I could see it was the reports of Walter Cronkite, I can remember. And the first experience was really CNN, watching in Europe. And that was a very interesting time. In the 90s, mid-90s, from starting mid-90s, we could watch it, and that was very, very good to see. And
let me just give a quick shameless plug. CNN's first White House correspondent ever will be our guest next week on the program, Bob Berkowitz. So had to get
very good.
Had to get that plug in there.
And a couple of years ago, I could meet Wolf Blitzer in Munich. He was there at the ceremony for the International CNN Journalistic Awards. Mm-hmm. And I met him. I could talk to him, and it was very interesting because he was also one of these icons of modern journalism for me.
Mm-hmm. And then what was your path into journalism yourself?
Well, I started doing, at that time it was all analog, with a VHS camera and doing, like little movies with my co-students in school. And the project never finished because it was very difficult to edit. We had to have 2 VCR recorder and have to simultaneously start them and record, and editing was really hard at that time. And later I joined the private radio in Munich when they started, and I made reports with them. And then I started my career here in Munich with TV White Blue, which was a local radio, a local TV station in Munich, just for the area of Munich. And that was pretty new because before in Germany, we had just 3 big channels, 2 nationwide and 1 regional wide. So that was for the whole of Bavaria. But local news was pretty new in the end of the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s. And I joined them, and I was there a reporter. And that was a very interesting time because at that time, they just invented mobile phones, but they were really big suitcases, and you had a
like car batteries. They were as big as car batteries.
Like car batteries. So I was called from the editorial board. Go to there's an accident, or go meet this politician for an interview. So they constantly called me up where I had to go as a flying reporter. And then we had these tapes, and we had to send them with a taxi to the TV station. And then in the mid-afternoon, I went there with a car back to the editorial room, and we edited together for the 7:00 news. So that was really interesting time where I learned a lot on journalism, on TV. And later I joined the Bavarian television in Munich, which is the regional one for whole of Bavaria and part of the first German channel network. And then I also worked for the first German channel network. And
is there any, with all these stories and years in journalism, is there any one story that you were really proud of, where you feel like, well, I put a spotlight on something that got attention in a way that other people didn't, and that you're proud of?
Yeah, it was my first report, which was broadcasted at the Bavarian television. I was just like an intern there, accompanying experienced journalists. But one day the head of the editorial board said, Nikolai, can you go to the parliament and just film some news about the now I missed the English word for household. The budget. Well, the budget of the Ministry of Cultural Affairs. And well, they had their press conference. It was quite boring. It was 40 people there, maybe 20 journalists and 20 parliamentarians. And there was the minister, the head of the ministry, and he was talking, and we were filming with the camera guy, and I said, "Oh God, that's so boring." And then I went during the press conference to the front and asked his press officer, "Can we have an interview with the minister?" And while he was talking still next to me. And then he said, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Well, for Bavarian TV." He said, "Yeah, go out. I follow you." And then we installed our camera nicely on the balcony with the view over all of Munich. And maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, the minister appeared. And then out of a sudden, I had the idea, oh my God, what should I ask him? I have no clue about the topic. So I asked, okay, dear minister, what's the bad thing on your budget? And he went red and, "You're absolutely right. I wanted to employ more teachers. I wanted to employ more this and that. And I needed more money for sports and blah, blah, blah." And so he brought all his ideas out, which he couldn't do with the budget. And so then I got some more ideas from some more questions, and the interview went wrong. Went well. And
well for you, but maybe not from his standpoint.
Yeah, right? He was quite good then. He was very experienced. But the first moment was and then I went back to the station, and the head of the editorial board came and said, "Nikolai, do you have this 30 seconds report?" And usually it would be made with a narrator telling the story while showing the picture of this boring press conference. And I said, "Yes, I have it, but it's so boring." So I asked the minister and asked for an interview. And he said, "What?" He refused to give an interview on this topic. I said, "No, I didn't interview." "Okay, let me show it." And I said, "Okay, that's cool. Oh, can you make 60 seconds out of it?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." Then later he come back and said, "Wow, do you have some more? Can you make 90 seconds? And I said, "Okay." So, and I did the 90-second piece out of this interview, and it was broadcasted in the evening news. And later he came and said, "Nikolai, from now on, you're a journalist here at Bayerischer Rundfunk."
Great.
That was the first interview.
Great success story. And ZM is asking a couple of questions. We're going to come to those in just a moment. So, by the way, if you have questions for Dr. Behr, feel free to post them, or you can hit StreamYard and come ask them yourself. Now, I hear that, and my own media training cap comes on and says, "Wow, that was decades ago, but you still remember the body language," which is why it's so important to look the way you want. Because if you can have the best messages in the world, if you look incredibly upset or angry, it has such a memory staying power. So I'm wondering if you took the same lesson away. The second thing that jumped out at me from your story is just the power of asking. You ask someone in different contexts to give you an interview. Quite often they will. And that's a great lesson in life for anything. Just ask for things. Don't accept that, oh, someone won't do that. But I want to know what other lessons you took away from that interview.
From this interview? Well, first of all, to prepare
the one that you did with the German official.
Yeah, first of all, to prepare an interview better. I was not expected to do this, but to go into the topic and do a proper research, which I usually did with my topics, and be.
Well, but even there, I'm wondering, is one of the lessons, don't be afraid to just ask a really general question, because sometimes people will project something very specific that they were trying to hide, and you could have researched for maybe 10 hours and not come up with that. By asking a general question, he kind of read into that negativity and took it in different ways. Is that one of the lessons?
Absolutely, absolutely. Have more courage to ask for something. Yeah.
Mhm.
If you don't ask her, she will never say yes to you. You know, that's that's a rule in life, and
Yes.
a lot of times we are, yeah, is it decent, or we from our education we say, oh no, I'm not sure if I can do so. Well, ask, and if the other person says no, then okay, but at least you have tried it.
Great words of wisdom from our expert today, Dr. Nikolai Behr, who's one of the foremost media trainers and communications experts in Germany and Europe and indeed the world. We do have questions coming in I don't want to ignore. ZM wants to know, what are your 5 top or handful of top tips for communication and public speaking that you really stress to people, whether you've got 5 days to work with them or 5 minutes? What are your top tips?
Be clear with your message. Live what you say. Check beforehand your target audience. Yeah. Who is it you're talking to? What do they love? What do they hate? And what are they afraid of? And then create really a clear message, a core message that everyone can understand. And then give good examples, give it some numbers, not too many. Yeah. I do a lot of trainings in the technical departments, and they tell you about every machine, 200 technical details. It's too much. You cannot process this. So the normal human can process maybe 3 different data. So stick with them. If someone is interested, he will ask for more, but don't deliver too much at once. And don't speak too uptight, maybe is the English word for it. So don't speak too much in your company language. Speak as you would speak with a teenager. They're quite inquisitive. They like to know everything, but they don't have the language ability of a grown-up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's quite a good idea.
Great tips, Nikolai. Do you have any one tip that surprises people the most, where they think, well, I haven't read that in the public speaking books, or that is counterintuitive to people, or any tip that you find is unique and people say they really haven't heard that before?
Water, clear water.
I'll drink to that.
For 2 reasons. Water is for your voice cords what oil is for your combustion engine. But second and most important, medical researchers found out that if you're slightly dehydrated, which most people are who work in office environments, your brain is up to 35% less able to process or to help you or to work properly. So you have up to 65% left of your brain capacity if you're dehydrated. So that's not good if you communicate. Yeah,
I hadn't
if you
heard
do an
that
interview
aspect of it
and
before.
TJ
That's
asks you
an interesting
something,
point.
you should have the 100%. So you should
I
drink
need
water.
100%. Yeah. Great tip. I appreciate that. And ZM says, wonderful tips. Another question has come in. I'm going to put a slightly different spin on it, if that's okay. The question revolves around your opinion of Gaza and Israel and politics. On our own channel, we don't get into political debates. There's so many others. But I do know that, like me, you do work with politicians. You do crisis communications. And if you're a politician in a lot of parts of the world, even being asked a question, certainly in the United States, about Israel, Gaza, the Middle East, it's almost a crisis by definition if someone asks you that question, because almost anything you say could cause tremendous tensions, anger, donors getting angry with you, voters getting angry with you. So if you could share, it doesn't even have to be applicable to this particular political issue. If you could share some of your top crisis communication tips for how you advise politicians and other leaders how to talk, whether you want to use this particular news story as an example, or if you want to pick your own, I'll let you judge.
Well, when it comes to crisis communication, you don't have general tips in general. You have to look into every case, into every situation, and every situation is different. What all these wars and crises show is that it's better to talk and to negotiate as long as you can. On the other hand, if you try to negotiate with the devil, you have to be strong. You cannot negotiate with the devil if you have your bare hands. So there are crisis situations, and usually when we work with companies, we talk maybe about the effects of crisis and wars. We have a war right here, 2,000 kilometers away from where I'm standing now. And the effects for the German and the European economy are tremendous, much more than COVID. Yeah, that's the biggest crisis in
your energy
in
supplies
history.
and many other aspects of your
Yeah,
economy
and
are
I mean,
harmed.
there's two big markets who just fell away, broke apart, or broke away, and so we don't do any negotiation in wars in a political way, but we're talking about the effects and some tough decisions for companies. And there we have to gather all the necessary information. We have to see the other person's perspective, and then we have to prepare internally before we start any negotiations. And it's always good to have a team of negotiators. So you have one person who is negotiating, and you have one person in the background who is like the head of the negotiation team. So therefore, the negotiator can always say, okay, I take this position, but I have to talk with the head of negotiation in my company. That's always good to have such a team, not just a one-on-one situation. And with most communication situations, preparation is key, active listening is key, and to have a clear strategy. When you know what you want, that's the first part. And then also draw a line, how much you could give in this specific situation, how much you can give away from your position to still have a okay agreement for yourself. So it's not always possible to have a win-win situation, but it's mostly possible to have a position where you keep your face and don't use your face if you look into the mirror.
I do want to bring up another contentious political issue, and that is climate change and environmental politics. And I know that's an issue near and dear to your heart because you actually have a doctorate in environmental politics. I do want to give you a heads up. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to do something. It may seem peculiarly American, but I'm going to do something with you that I like to do with every guest, and that is to give you 2 minutes on the screen. No questions. I just want you to promote. We try to encourage people to embrace speaking on behalf of themselves, whether it's a job interview, a new business pitch, and get comfortable talking about how they help other people and what they're good at. So I want to give you a heads up to promote any aspect of your business. Think of your ideal client, your ideal American client, whether it's General Motors, if their executives are watching this. I want to give you an opportunity to promote your website, upcoming books, documentaries, anything you want to promote. And I actually take myself off the screen and let you just promote in a very undiluted way. So that will be coming up in a minute. Again, our special guest today is Dr. Nikolai Behr. He's one of the top political and media communications consultants in the world, and he's based in Germany. We're so happy he's here with us today. I want to pick your brain as a strategist now, because here in the United States, it seems that so many people who do care about global climate change, do care about global warming, they're always on the defensive in terms of their communication skills and their communication messages, because the people who want to say, well, global warming is a hoax and this whole environmental stuff, it's just a way of attacking big businesses, they are often, and this is not my belief, they're often more successful at communicating to voters. In fact, without going into all the politics, there is a major presidential candidate in the United States this year who has been a president before and says that his first, one of his first actions is going to be to roll back every pro-environmental policy, to make it virtually impossible to buy an electric cars, because he wants people buying more coal and gas and putting it all out in the environment. He seems to be right now he's leading in the polls. So something the environmentalist movement is doing, no matter how many facts are on the side, they're not communicating effectively. They're constantly coming across as scolds, as people who want to take away your fun, make you bike to work instead of driving in a nice car. They're constantly people who seem to be getting it wrong, because if you have a cold day and day colder than normal, it means there couldn't be global warming compared to the other side. So I want you to put your strategist hat on, if you could, at least in the US political context, which I know you're familiar with. How can environmentalists and politicians who support stronger environmental policies communicate effectively? Because I just see them constantly on the defensive.
From my point of view, a lot of them are too radical.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you do smaller steps by one, you can reach the same goals. Yes, the situation is drastic. It's a really bad situation the environment is in. But on the other hand, people need their income. People need their... TJ, are you still there?
Oh yeah, we're here.
Everything's black here. Can you still?
We can see you. Everything is fine. I don't know what happened on your end, but we're hearing everything fine, and we're seeing you fine.
Okay, at least. Hold on.
Sometimes it's best to leave and just click in the room again.
Hold on.
And folks, apologies for the technical difficulties. We're doing things now that are commonplace, but not that long ago would have seemed like a miracle without the advantage of a gigantic TV network with hundreds of millions of dollars of satellites and technology. Now we're doing it at almost no cost. So, Nikolai, you're back. Can you hear me and see me?
I can hear you. I can see you now again.
Okay. Great. I don't know what happened there, because we could see you and hear you the whole time.
Okay.
So
probably it was the
sleep mode.
It was the sleep mode of my monitor due to some environmental laws. I don't know. Maybe that was the reason behind it.
Okay. So back to your tips on how people can communicate more effectively pro-environmental messages.
Yeah. So it's a big topic, and it has a lot to do with education. So if there's a big guy telling the people everything is hoax, well, they should watch the weather cast. They should see the statistics on how much more these thunderstorms are in the recent years, how much more floodings are worldwide, how much the raise of the average temperature is in all continents. That are facts. That not alternative facts. These are facts, scientific facts. And the point is discussing these things with people who do not have the ability or the access to proper education. That's hard. That's really hard. And they fell usually for people who have radical, simple solutions.
Mhm.
But we live in a very complex world, and everything works together. It's like this little how you call them, these wheels who go into each other, you know, and turn every machine. So one effect causes another effect, and this causes another effect. So it's not that simple in saying, no, we just don't care and it's a hoax. That's wrong, and a big percentage of the world sees it and believes it. And we have a lot of effects, and you cannot say that's not true. Well, you
Well, I'm
can.
wondering,
And
it
it's
does bring up the
so for
it
the
does bring up the bigger.
environmentalists, I think it's important not to be too radical in what they demand. They should go for smaller steps. And the resistance is too big if they say, well, we should stop selling combustion engine cars. They should say, okay, tax them more than other vehicles, or tax
But
the one
interesting,
with the high consumption.
even that position is now seen as too radical in a lot of parts of the country, here in the United States. The idea that you would give any favor to an electric car, for example, is under attack. And in certain states, the one I'm in right now, you can be fired from your job for even using if you're a government official, using the phrase global warming is seen as so politicized. So there's certain challenges that to me, that brings up a much bigger issue, which I know as a communicator, you have to grapple with. We live in a world now with social media fragmentation, filter bubbles.
What's about the freedom of speech?
And there's freedom of speech issues. But one of the issues that I find myself grappling with, and so many others, is if you believe in freedom of speech, which democracies tend to value, it does seem to favor those who are willing to tell the biggest lie. Because if you just constantly spew lies, and you have another side that's committed to factual discourse, rational discourse, they're spending all of their times correcting lies, and then people hear the lie over and over again. That becomes the template. And I'm wondering, how do you advise a corporate client, for example, that is subjected to certain opposition, where there's just so many layers of lies upon lies, that if you spend all of your time trying to debunk the lies, your own positive message never gets out? Or it seems to be a radical position because of an infrastructure of lies that have been built around it.
So if I see the big corporates, even the big American corporates, they very well see the effects of global warming and the environmental problems. It's much more a certain political wing in the US who denies it. In Europe, for example, there's just a minority who says that's not true and that's all hoax. So most accept science here. But we have to go step by step. You know, if we, for example, what the German government did, to be very radical within the last 2 years with the heating systems in Germany. We're not allowed to have any more gas or any more oil, for example, or any more usual electrical ovens. We have to go with solar panels, with wind, and with these exchange systems, air exchange warming. I don't know how the correct word is in English for that. It's too radical, because you have people who just ordered a new heater and they cannot build it in their house, or they cannot afford the other one, or it's not suitable for their personal environment. But you have to push people towards ideas for the environments. You have to show them how critical the situation is. But one point is important. People, first of all, need their jobs, and they need their food, and they need their security. And if they're afraid of this, they won't listen to environmental problems, because the others come first in their hierarchy. So you have to do both. And well, I'm not in the position to give the US or any US politicians good advices. We have enough problems here in Germany. But sometimes you have to bring it in a real perspective.
Mhm.
What Germany can save in energy and CO2 in 1 year is blown out in China in 3 days.
Wow.
Last year, I was 2 times in Egypt, and the bigger area of Cairo, the capital of Egypt, has 27 million inhabitants, and there's constant smog. If you fly in to Cairo, you barely can see the roads or the streets, even in a clear day, because it's so much smog there.
Mhm.
If you see this, then you come home and ask yourself, okay, and why are we not allowed to have a diesel car going in the city center of Munich? That's ridiculous. You know, it's, for some people, it's too radical. And now the communication comes in. You have to still be able to communicate with the people and to explain your position. But in the last maybe 2 decades, people stopped talking to each other. They started more talking about each other and got their information not from their neighbors or from the community where they engaged in former times. They got it exclusively from social media and from their social media bubble, not from the other bubble who might have a different opinion, because they want to hear their own stuff again and again and again, like an echo chamber, and want to have this good feeling, because if someone else is saying the same stuff what I'm saying usually, then I'm pretty good. Well, I'm
We're
right.
part of a community. We're
part
the
of the
good guys
community.
against the bad guys over here.
Yeah.
It is a
And
harmful
the people
dynamic that
don't
we can
see
all fall into.
that we have a big community, and the big community is the inhabitants of this planet. And if we destroy it, then is no more good life on this planet, you know?
Yeah. Well, Nick, I appreciate you going big. Nothing is more big picture than the entire planet and the fate of the planet. Let's drill down and go really deep into something for a minute in tactical areas, because a lot of people who watch this show are interested in communication skills, communications training, and I'm always interested in different approaches. If a CEO comes to me for a day of training, it's typically we have dinner the night before, we start for the day, and I'm going to get them on camera for a dozen little speeches or media interviews. And we role play, watch, critique again and again. But that's not the only way of doing it. Tell us what a typical engagement is for you, whether it's a CEO or a top executive. They come to you and say, hey, I just want to get a lot better at my media skills or presentation skills. How do I work with you?
So it's a shift there. So let's start 15 years ago. Usually I got a call from the press officer in, let's say, 70, 80%. And they say, my CEO needs this and that. Nowadays, it's, say, 50, 60% the HR department or the HR department for the top management calling me, and maybe only 20% press officers, and maybe 10% the CEO office by itself. So the awareness is already different. And most of the modern leaders know they need someone to coach them, to support them with their messages, with their appearance on important communications events. And we have CEOs who call me 2 days ahead and say, well, I have this big meeting. Do you have still time for a meeting, or can you give me an online coaching for this? And others who do on a regular basis, like say 4 times a year, plan it a couple of months in advance. So you have everything in between. Usually when we have a training meeting, we don't meet the evening before. That's very rarely, but it's a good idea. I try to invent this. Usually we start in the morning, make some research together, what's important for them in their message. And I ask them, okay, what would be your message to this target group? And often we change a lot within the message itself before we start talking about the appearance in front of the audience. And then we do a lot of training with the camera together. And sometimes I have the camera with me. Usually we have a camera person, a camera lady, or a cameraman doing the job to give it a more professional environment. And for some people, it's really stressy if they have the big lights, if they have the microphone and a big camera. And
now, is that good or bad? Because I've heard people say, oh, we don't want to stress our people out. And I always say, I want them stressed. If they can't perform in the stress of when no one's going to see it, how are they going to perform when the real CNN is there? So how do you view this?
That's the point.
What's the appropriate level of stress to give in a training is really the question.
It depends a little bit on the experience. And imagine some football or basketball trainer doing just the training with softballs. It wouldn't work. Yeah, you have to have the actual ball. You have to have the actual force you need for later. And if they fail, well, then they fail. But then they learn from their failures, and it's documented on camera. And you see every round, and they're getting better and better. And that's the great on our job, TJ. In the evening, they're all happy because they see a big progress. I've practically never had a client who did not see progress. Well, I had once a lady. She did not saw the progress, and she had no progress because she didn't want it to. Yeah, she refused to do it. She refused.
What do you do? Did she refuse to be on camera, or was she told by your HR you have to be there?
To change things. I told her and I showed her, and she didn't believe it. I mean, sometimes that happened, but there was one lady in 17 years where I have my company now. But usually you see this great progress, and that's so helpful in our business. If we see, sorry, my screen went black again.
Oh,
I have to work on this.
Your energy saving devices are doing their job. They're saving the energy.
Yeah.
But we can see you and hear you clearly.
Okay.
That may be an indicator I am stealing too much of your energy and all of your time. We do appreciate it.
Not at all.
Let's switch gears a minute. I do want to offer you the same courtesy I give all of our guests. And apologies if this seems too stereotypically hyper-promotional America. But what I want to do is hear you promote, because we try to encourage people and empower people to feel confident when they are promoting their businesses, their craft, their service, their expertise. So what I want to do is just give you a couple of minutes, and you can set the stage as far as whether you're speaking to a convention of automotive CEOs and you like their business, but really sell us on what you do. And if you want to encourage us to sign up for follow up with you on LinkedIn or your website or any of that, feel free to do that. I'm going to step off. I'll be here. I'm not leaving, but I'm going to step off, and I want to just hear you promote and tell the world about what you do and what you're happy about doing.
Hi, I'm Nikolai, and I like to help you with your messages, how you bring your messages to your target group and how to make clear, concise, and empathetic communication. If you're interested, you can look me up on the internet. You can subscribe my newsletter. It won't be very often because I usually work with CEOs and executives on their communication and do not have that much time to write my own newsletters. And I'm sitting in Munich, Germany, but I have a lot of international clients from all over the world, especially big companies, also from the US, who work in the German or European market and are not so familiar with the European environment, with the European communications environment. And if I can help you there, I'd be really glad if you contact me. And I thank TJ Walker for this possibility. It's a very interesting show, and I like to watch it with a lot of interesting guests. And now I'm one of them, and I'm very proud of it. Thanks a lot, TJ. And if I can help you, just contact me.
Great. Thanks, Nikolai. Hey, I want to sort of end our program by looking at the future, because I've known you now for a long time, and you're always experimenting, whether it's with panoramic view, video, live video. What technologies fascinate you the most in terms of really helping you and helping your clients communicate more effectively? I know I've become obsessed lately with digital clones and what they can do, but I want to know what you're focused on. What are you testing? Because you're always testing new things as well.
Yeah. Maybe you remember I had this 360-degree VR goggles where we do the media training if someone has stage fright. That works quite well. And I will probably update it when we will have the new Apple Vision Pro. It's not available in Germany right now, but I will be in the US in August, and we'll have a closer look to it. Maybe we can work with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through that? What is that? How would that help someone if they're nervous about public speaking? How would you use that?
Well, we can simulate different environments. So, and we go step by step from a small room with just the two colleagues to a bigger room, like a seminar room with 20, 30, 40 colleagues, to a big audience in a huge theater. And you let people give their speech, and then you see their reaction, you see their body language, you see their voice change from room to room. And even if they know it's not a real environment, after, let's say, 1 or 2 minutes, they're fully into this situation. And for them, it's a softer approach than to go from a round of 10 people to an audience of 1,000 people. So that's very good, and we liked it. We were like a pioneer here. I've never met someone else doing this. We started this in 2016, and we still like it. We do now a lot with avatars. We experienced a lot with them with this digital clone. We did a series on.
Do you? Let me follow up on that if I could. Do you have a digital clone? Like if I go to your website and I spoke German, could I ask your clone a question?
If you have my YouTube channel, I have an explanation why you need media training in, I think, 15 languages. And most people don't even realize that this is a clone. Mm-hmm. For me, it's obvious because it's a wide angle video, which created the clone. And we will probably update this, but it was just the experiencing. And I can tell you, I was invited last year for a keynote in Cairo in Egypt on fake news and deepfake. And first of all, I presented them my digital clone on screen, telling them in Arabic, watch out, there's an analog guy coming and telling you something about deepfake and fake news. Don't believe him. He's completely analog and he's from Germany. And they stared at it and said, that can't be. It's unbelievable. How did you learn Arabic so good? And he said, no, that's a clone. And I said, well, how good was the Arabic? And I said, Nikolai, this Arabic is so perfect. Probably only 2 professors on the University of Cairo could speak that kind of Arabic. It's too good. So, and
by the way, we've had
right
some people
now it's just a little bit of fun game.
1 second. We've had some people asking to see your YouTube channel. I just want to remind them, if you scroll up in the comments, earlier in the comments, we've posted a link to Dr. Behr's YouTube channel, and you can fish around and look for that as well.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, I have 2 YouTube channels. The English one has not so many hits, so I gave you the German one with an English playlist, but the avatars I think are on the other one, and it's DIKT Media Training. Maybe they can find it this way by YouTube, or if they send me a message, I will send them the link. And it's very funny.
And we
to
have
see
posted
Nikolai
your
in all
LinkedIn
languages.
page, and they can reach out to you there as well. And we'll try to post the correct link in the show notes as well. Do you envision a day, or maybe you're already doing it, can your clone actually conduct a training with a client at this point? Can it answer people, listen to them, respond to them?
I think for some basic training, definitely yes. I mean, we did trainings together. Some, like the trainings we did, where it's pre-recorded, you can bring a lot of information across with a clone.
Mm-hmm.
But
can it listen to, because that's what I'm spending all my time on, frankly, is biology, but it's Delphi.ai. I've fed in all my books and YouTube and courses. So now if you go to it, you push a button, you ask it a question. And in fact, I did it earlier. I said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Nikolai Behr. How can I make this interview interesting? And it would talk to me and gave me suggestions for questions to ask and things like that.
Okay.
Will your clone be responsive at that level, or is it more giving out pre-recorded video messages?
Yeah. At the moment, it's pre-recorded video messages because I had not the time, to be honest, to go deeper into that. But I know it's possible right now, and it will be much easier in the next couple of months to program it like this. It's if you're experimenting with ChatGPT, for example, and you feed them with all your informations, they really give very clever answers. And a lot of my clients work with on their website with chatbots who are programmed by just reading all the informations they could provide from the company, and they can give quite proper answers. So yes, we can do this for like group trainings, for introductory trainings to certain fields of communication. But
it's exciting. It's exciting times to be a communicator, and this can save a lot of time because our clones can be available 24/7. Speaking of time, I appreciate all of your time today. Very special thanks to Dr. Nikolai Behr for being our guest today on the TJ Walker Success Show. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, TJ. Have a great time and all the best for your show.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Take care. And say hello to your family for me.
Definitely.
Right.
You too.
Thanks a lot. And we'll send you the links to the finished shows too when we get them. But this one will actually be up. Second we stop the live feed, it goes on as a live on demand. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, and we'll disconnect from your Facebook now. We won't force them to continue watching. I'm going to go a few more minutes with my show here, and we'll go from there. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Let me know when you come to the U.S. I'm down in South Florida now, but let me know.
I will be in Seattle, and then I'm on the NSA National Speakers Association's convention in Denver, Colorado.
Is that in July, or when will that be?
Early August, I think from the 3rd to the 6th, something like that. So I'm flying back on the 9th, but I
Are you
won't make it
speaking
so
at
far.
NSA, or you're attending?
I'm there. No, I'm not speaking. I'm attending. Yeah.
Because I used to go to those a lot. I just haven't been in a while. But let me know what you think of it.
Yeah, I was there last year and really liked it. I got so much inspiration, and maybe you can make it and come up to.
So let me ask you about, and because a lot of our viewers, this is what we call the post show, which we show sometimes in the.
Okay.
And I want to be respectful of your time, because I know we've kept you a long time. So tell me, if you remember, what ideas did you get from last year that you've used? Because I went to their conventions for many years, and I kind of stopped going because I felt like the proportion of bad ideas I got was too high compared to the good idea. I mean, I don't mind bad ideas. I don't mind 20 bad ideas if I get 2 really good ones I can act upon that make a difference. But I just found, after going a number of years, the percentage of bad ideas I got to good was out of whack. And there were just so many people there who didn't seem to have any revenue model at all, and were just kind of fishing around for a hobby and the vanity of wanting to be able to say, I'm on stage speaking in front of a lot of people. So that's kind of why I stopped going. But things could have changed, and I may be out of touch. So do you remember anything that really jumped out at you that was particularly valuable, that you hadn't heard from any place else, that you acted upon?
So I think the big difference from the US to Germany is the level of enthusiastic engagement with the audience on stage. And that's so much different to Germany. And I think we can a lot learn from that, and the connection between the audience and the stage, the artist performing on stage. And an important point is, and that you can see on stage, the higher the level of empathetic communication and honest communication comes from the stage, the higher the engagement is in the audience. And that's quite a big stage there for a couple of days. I mean, there was 1,300 people or 1,500 people, and most of the speakers had a really, really good connection to their audience.
They have a lot of good speakers, there's no doubt. I remember the first convention I went to, I was thinking, wow, some of these people could stand up and read a phone book and I'd be on the edge of my seat. They were so entertaining.
I mean, there was Les Brown, I mean, he's a legend, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
But in the end, his messages are so simple, but they are clear, and you see that he believes what he says, and he walks and lives what he says.
He is a great speaker. I met him at an NSA conference, and but let me ask you, how does the motivational market work in Germany? Because here, Les Brown is sort of the, this epitome, in some ways, a standard of a motivational speaker. He grew up not far away from where I am right now. He grew up in Miami, very poor, didn't have any parents. I think his grandmother, aunt raised him, was a twin, was labeled, this was the medical term they used at the time, I think educably retarded, had every kind of disadvantage thrown his way. And he made it, became rich and successful. And his message is, as a motivational speaker, if I could be born with absolutely no advantage, no education, being labeled mentally deficient, if I can be successful, you can do. And people are like, wow, if he can do it, what's holding me back?
Yeah.
That's kind of the standard archetype of a motivational speaker in America. Does that work as well? And do you still see that in Germany?
It's different in Germany. We have now a generation where they try to do it, and some are successful there. But it's not as common as in Germany. So Les Brown is not here, the only guy who's here really famous, the only American one is Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
He is quite famous from the Americans. But in Germany, it's really a language thing. So there are some German motivational speakers who have a very good living, but their show is not so big like the ones Tony Robbins or Les Brown are doing.
Yeah.
Usually I have not to do with them so much, because that's a B2C business and I'm so much more into B2B business, but you can learn a lot from them. And for example, one person really hit me. I forgot her name, but she is the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. And she had a really hard childhood. And she is now one of the most influential ladies in sports management worldwide. I mean, she is really working with these big basketball guys and all the management and promotional stuff and all the big money behind it. And she is such a decent and lovely person, a strong woman, made an exceptional career. And to meet persons like her and to talk to persons like her, that was really incredible.
We'll have to check her out. I'm not familiar with
like
them,
the founder of Netflix. I met the founder of Netflix. Very, very brainy guy. Mark Rudolph or something like that.
Well, there's Reed Hastings is one. Oh, Mark Rudolph. I've read his book. Yes, he was the original founder who left very early on. But fascinating story.
Very interesting persons, and also to meet the other persons, and see what made them to become a speaker or a coach.
Yeah.
So
great insights.
Probably if you go there for a couple of years, it's always the same. But for me, it was really, really good. Really good experience.
I may have to give it another try. Who knows? I may see you there. Who knows? Hey, I got to respect your time. We have to say goodbye.
This year they have a youth conference, and I bring my son with me. He attends the youth conference. Great. So you could bring your daughter. It's from
that's a good idea.
10 years till 17 years.
Great. Well, she's in that bracket. She's 11 now.
Yeah.
Great. Well, say hello to your son and your wife, and hope to see you soon.
Okay.
All right.
TJ,
take care. Bye-bye.
All the best for you and your family.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.